So I really like to learn like what is that one thing of Anand that he wrote before, and it repeated for many years, like old stories, and now it actually like become the history because it have been reborn. What is that old
Mm,
story of Anand?
mm. Well, uh, I think it's a story that you constantly amaze yourself of how much anxiety you build up when you're trying to do something new. And it was a trend I noticed just by journaling, right? You know, at the end of a workday, writing about how I was so nervous and anxious about a meeting that I was going, because I was going to meet some big bosses and high level managers from a different department. And then I reflected and I realized that upon attending the meeting, whatever that I feared did not come to pass. I was fearful of the fact that I was unable to answer their questions. I was going to embarrass myself. So I put a note in my journal. And the next time, if I had a big speech I had to give in Toastmasters for a contest, for example, and of course the anxiety comes back, and I wrote it down again. So that's one thing that I've started to realize. And now I immediately sort of can tell my that negative thought that you were referring to earlier, that hey, you know what, you've come to me before. Every single time in the past you've come to me, and it turns out to be it wasn't bad as what you said. So I hear you. I understand that you're going to be there. You're a safety mechanism because that's how our brain works. A lot of the things that kick in sometimes are still because the brains are still pretty primitive, and they are there for a reason to keep us safe. But we, the rational part of the brain, has to take charge and also understand that, hey, you know what? And then one of the anchoring beliefs I've always asked myself whenever I'm facing a difficulty is, what's the worst thing that can happen?
Mm.
I mean, really, what is the very worst thing that can happen? And when you start to think about it, the worst thing, I mean, okay, so you embarrass yourself. Maybe you couldn't answer some questions in front of big shots or the audience, or you forgot your speech, what you're about to say. Okay, yeah, on the day you might feel bad, you might feel down, but look back at it, 3 months later, 3 years later, 10 years later, it's like it's just another day. You're still alive. So it's we the that part of our brain tends to overcome whatever emotions that we have, and that unfortunately then causes us to not be as effective in whatever task that we're going to do. So I've come to realize that, that the next challenge that's going to come is just a story that has been repeated time and time again, and it's just playing a video game at the next level, right? Because you've done level 20, you decide to stay at level 20, yeah, but you've already passed it. So why didn't you go to level 21? It's harder, it's more difficult, and maybe that's how I see life. It's just a video game. Every year is an a is a round, it's a game, it's a level, and life doesn't get easier, but you do it enough times, you reflect, you definitely can get better.
Yeah, it's now even become like Netflix, like company produce movies every time, like
Yes.
faster and more, like kind of like that drama or uh, loving all the different kind of dimension that we can actually produce in here. So you actually gives us a beautiful way of listening and acknowledging that it actually protects us as a, like let's say as an animal somewhere part of us is still to need to be protected, and then we know that that is good in that sense, but it doesn't mean that it needs to like direct our action. So what is that movie or that kind of video game still repeated in your mind that you think it hinder your next level, the next rebirth level?
Oh yeah, it's gonna be, and sometimes things happen that are outside of your control.
Mm.
What I always feel is that whatever hindrances or barriers that I have ever faced, and sometimes I struggle to think that I do have any barriers, because maybe they are there, but the fact that I have this approach of seeing barriers as somewhat necessary, because I don't know where it was. I heard this from someone. I think it was the person who wrote the book, The Last Lecture, and he talked about the fact of how the walls exist because it is there to see who really wants what's beyond the wall. Because if the wall does not exist, if the barriers are not there, then every single person will achieve success easily. And because you achieve success easily, then you take it for granted. So you don't really get a sense of achievement. So when there are barriers, when there are things that are hindering me from achieving a particular success, I will just focus on the things that are within my control. What are things that I can control? And if I do not achieve the success, if I did my very best on the areas that I control, then yeah, that's another time. It's a lesson learned. Uh, I didn't win, but I didn't lose either. I learned. I learned what I should do better next time. I learned that there are things that I can obviously improve upon. So ultimately, it's your approach to life. Because if you take everything as whatever that you're trying to achieve, you must succeed. Odds on that, I mean, nobody wins all the time. You're gonna lose. You're gonna fail. So take those as part of the journey. And you'll find that overall, if you're going to take those ups and downs together, your trajectory is still going to go up. And that's important.
Beautiful. So it's like difficult to answer like what is that challenges, because it's really a part of life. And I think this one is like the very empowering approach. There's some kind of very similar pattern like self-sabotage, self-destroy. As you said before, like we sometimes search for feedback and depend on it to the level that is not actually positive, to lose the capacity to actually do it for ourselves and have that kind of very stillness inside us and the inner power. So this makes me also remind of my journey and also the people that I work with. Sometimes we are so much like knowing that struggling is a part of our life, so we actually create that instead of actually it comes when it's like we create it, so we feel like we are in the struggle. So do you feel that you did have that journey before, or you saw somebody, and how would we actually recognize that actually that is a self-sabotage? It's not actually needed, because we can spend that energy on service and on mission rather than destroying some part of us.
Yeah. So the point that you've made on self-sabotage is fantastic. I mean, and so it's two sides of a coin, right? You can see it as self-sabotage, but I like what you've mentioned, that sometimes it's important to also create obstacles and challenges so that you keep yourself, and if you're leading a team of people, to keep them on edge as well. So I find myself sometimes doing things like this. Maybe, for example, right, I would, if I know, for example, well, in my line of work, what I can tell you is a principle that I have, for example, is if I were to deliver a program which I have delivered before many, many, many times, be it for the same client or for a different client, it's a principle of mine to at least change something very small, either in the content or a certain learning activity that I do. It's not for the participants. For them, everything is new. It's for me. Because I don't want to be the person who, before entering a classroom, thinks to themselves that, hey, you know what? It's easy. I've done this so many times before, and it's just a matter of just repeating it. So once you get into that mode where you don't have any challenge at all, that's also a form of self-sabotage, because you are making it too easy for yourself. And then that is when you start lowering your standards. And when you start lowering your standards, you're giving yourself permission to slack and do not give value to the people that are investing their time attending your programs. So I personally always try to do that as a principle. And it's a principle I've always had. So when there is no challenge, when there are no obstacles, create something so that this is still working, so you're still a little bit, it's important to be a little bit uh, nervous, a little bit anxious before the start of something, because if you don't have it at all, that's a very negative sign as well. It's I think, I think Beyonce said it. I don't know whether she actually said it, but I saw it in a quote somewhere where she said that I'm worried of the day that I don't get nervous before a concert.